Good morning, folks. We'll start in 1 minute. We'll try to give folks time to join before we dive in. All right. Well, good morning, folks. My name is Gary Clark, President and CEO of Economic Alliance Snohomish County, and welcome to another Coffee Chats with Economic Alliance Snohomish County. I would like to just give you a brief intro and update to the things that we have been doing to support small businesses and large businesses in Snohomish County. And with that in mind, we have what we call a host of partners and engagers from the Economic Alliance Snohomish County perspective with the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. We also have SBDC, STEM, Department of Transportation, SBTRC. These are all acronyms that we can share with you at a later date, but most of our small and large businesses engage on resources. But we've also started down a path of highlighting the potential for what we call the Snoco Creative Haven, which is really an expansion and extension of the resource work that we've done, trying to find a hub and spoke option for the Snohomish County business community. We've also realized that we have 100 plus business resources throughout the county for our communities and entrepreneurs. And so how do we make sure that we can create a space where that is in a specific location where they can find that information and parcel it out to different factions of the county? So with that in mind, we're excited to say that Economic Alliance Snohomish County is here to support our business community and will continue to engage in those efforts. But I have some news that just launched before we dive into our intro of our first speaker. And so I'd like to highlight, and this information will go in the chat later as Katie gets a chance to put it there, but we want to thank and congratulate Zero Avia and their project at Payne Field. It is tied to a state grant effort, which you will see, but this is in partnership with some of our state and community partners. So I'd like to highlight those really quickly. Washington State Department of Commerce, obviously Zero Avia, Payne Field, Snohomish County Airport, and Snohomish County government. So I just wanted to give you a quick highlight on that. Amazing news for Payne Field and Zero Avia and Snohomish County. Now, drum roll, please. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Kara Main Hester, Dr. Kara Main Hester, by the way, the Chief Recovery and Resilience Officer for Snohomish County. She recently started this role January 3rd and previously served as the Deputy Director of ORR. Kara, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Gary. And I hope that I am going to share screen, so apologies as I do this. I'm really excited about this opportunity and to get back to what I'm now branding as a little bit of the new normal for Snohomish County, because I think recovery is an interesting term right now. Do we really want to go back to doing exactly what we were doing before? I think a lot of us say, we spent a lot of time thinking during the pandemic and maybe thinking about how we could live our lives a little differently. And so I'm really excited for this conversation today and really thinking about what our new normal can be. So as you mentioned, I'm the Chief Recovery and Resilience Officer for Snohomish County, and we have a team that's been put together. And my previous background, just a little bit about me, is I came from the Seattle City Budget Office, where we worked through the pandemic. We worked on FEMA public assistance. We worked on getting some CARES funding out, and then worked on this new funding. And so we'll talk about all of that and how these investments, we hope, can really help some of the businesses that are listening today. So we have a team, we're small but mighty. We have a team of 7. And so we will be bringing on a deputy director later this month. And Chrissy will be in charge of really focusing on some of our performance management. So what that means is we really want to make sure that anything that we put in place is something that is actually producing the results for our community that we're looking for. Kelsey and Marco are both in our communications, on our communications team. We have Jessica in contracting and our administrative assistant, who many of you have met, Simrit. And we will be, I just want to commit to everyone on this call that when you send us an email, there are not enough of us that we don't receive that email. We want to hear from you, and you'll hear us a lot. You'll see us a lot in the community as we work to put out programs, but really, what are those things? And that's the more interesting thing than our team. Okay, so the American Rescue Plan Act. First of all, I want to apologize for opening this with some government bureaucratic name zinger words. The American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, you've probably heard of it. I got my first scam call about ARPA yesterday, about telling me that I had won some money from ARPA. So it is a huge amount of funding that the Biden administration passed back in March. And Snohomish County has received a pretty significant amount, $160 million. And we'll talk about how that all works together. This funding is explicitly for the recovery from the pandemic. And that actually is in a variety of different ways that we're hoping to recover from the pandemic. So it supports our COVID response. So some of the work that public health is doing, especially in testing right now, we're supporting that with this funding. Replacing lost revenue and ensuring that government actually builds back the jobs previously, because we do know that during the Great Recession, government jobs actually were a pull on the economy because we didn't build back appropriately. But more importantly to everyone here, this funding, and we're focusing a lot of this funding in Snohomish County on supporting that economic stabilization for household and businesses, particularly small businesses, and particularly small businesses that were most affected by the pandemic. And we even go so far as to say disproportionately affected. And so we really do want to put programs and funding mechanisms in place to ensure that we approach or mitigate these economic challenges. And with any large amount of funding, unfortunately with this funding, there is a lot of reporting requirements, a lot of contracting requirements. And that's where I do want to mention that this funding is different than our CARES funding. So CARES is what we previously had put into place in 2020 and 2021. And the focus really was to get the money out as fast as possible and to ensure that we could support our economy and really pivot because of the pandemic. And this funding has a little bit longer tail. It goes all the way through 2026. And it really focuses on kind of some of those medium-term goals. I think the infrastructure bill that passed then builds on that, looks at long-range goals. And so really understanding for everyone that there are more requirements. There are, it is different from CARES in that there are more requirements, there's more reporting, there's more contracting requirements. Snohomish County, as I mentioned, received $160 million. We receive our first half. We've already received our first half. We'll receive the second half. And at this point, we actually have budgeted out that first half of funding, but we've only spent about $3 million and contracted or obligated for about 18. So we have quite a bit of funding that we'll be working through. And at this point, we focused on immediate needs. So we focused on public health needs, food, childcare assistance, some rapid rehousing assistance, and then workforce reentry programs are the specific areas that we focus on at this point. So our principles for recovery investments. So as we're thinking about our investments, I will say we are starting to have that middle term outlook. So moving from those focusing on basic needs to focusing on what are the strategies and the principles that we should have in place as we move forward. And our primary focus is to really center on communities that are furthest from opportunity. And what the pandemic has writ large is that those businesses, those households that already were struggling are struggling at an even higher rate and have a higher need than they had before. And it is these organizations that we want to support the most. We are seeing a lot of community organizations also very much struggle through the pandemic. We'll focus on resiliency, so we don't want to focus on a short-term bandage that doesn't leave us any better off in the future. Of course, we will prioritize fiscal responsibility and then focus on those data-driven decisions. Are we actually doing a good job with this investment, and should we invest more in this space for these programs? We can be a bit of an acronym soup in the government, and we want to make sure that those acronyms actually make sense, as do those organizations. So as mentioned, we've focused on immediate needs with this first $80 million installment. 31 of that has gone to community support. Those things, as I mentioned, like childcare, rapid rehousing, things like that, homelessness services. Really what we want to focus on here today, we'll focus a little bit more on that $17 million that we've invested in economic and workforce recovery. And those are programs that we're actually in the process of developing, discussing, and really identifying the gaps, because there is a variety of funding in this space. And we want to ensure that we are actually helping and not just making one more thing that Gary has to chase down and figure out how to connect folks with. That's redundant with the other things. And then we have public health and reserve investments. And those reserve investments, I just do want to flag, depending on how the pandemic moves, those may become available again for our economic workforce and community support. So we are in Q1 of 2022. You should start seeing some of these programs be launched, particularly in the community support space. And in Q2, we are focusing on launching programs for small business support, tourism, workforce development. We will then our office is going to move really quickly to figuring out how we're going to invest that next $80 million. And you'll see some engagement with folks like you to really help us figure that out and understand what recovery and resiliency looks like. Because what we're realizing very quickly is this is not like anything we've ever done before or ever seen. This is not a recession. This is really different. And I am not the expert by any means on all of the resources that are available for small businesses, but we did want to throw a couple onto this presentation. But I also wanted to mention, we're in this really difficult space right now where all the CARES funding has kind of moved through the system. The new funding is starting. Ooh, my hands don't work very well. The new funding is starting, and unfortunately, there's a little bit of a gap. So there are going to be a ton of additional programs that you'll see from the state, federal, and local level within the next probably 6 months. So expect this list to grow, and watch these websites for more information. And as I mentioned, this is a quick 10 minutes, but that's the whole point, so we can get to our questions. Don't hesitate to contact us. We are not only all ears, but would love to understand any challenges that you're seeing or any gaps in help that you need help with. As I mentioned, this is a group, this is a team that actually responds to their emails and receives those emails. So know that this is not some generic bot that your email will go to. So thank you so much, and we want to hear from you. And now we'll do some Q&A.
All right, thank you so much for that presentation. Now we have the opportunity to welcome a few others to the panel. So first and foremost, a Economic Alliance Snohomish County board member, Board of Trustees. We have the distinct pleasure of welcoming Amy Druell, the owner of Mosaic Insurance Alliance, LLC. Folks, if you are not aware, Amy is also the chair of the Future Workforce Alliance. So Amy, you are amazing, and you've done amazing work for Snohomish County. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, and last but not least, the outstanding economic development focused and background-centric gentleman I have here at the bottom of my screen. I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming James Henderson. He serves as Chief Economic and Workforce Development for Snohomish County Executive Office. James, you've been an amazing partner thus far, and we want to thank you for joining us today. All right. Thank you, James. Okay, folks, now we get to dive into some conversation, and I'm going to keep this up with a few questions. But folks, if you are joining us online, please feel free to ask questions in the chat, and Katie and I will make sure that we can merge those with some of the questions we have here. We really want to have a robust conversation, have a detailed conversation about the things that we have here for recovery for our business community. So with that in mind, panelists, I would like to ask this initial question. How will recovery efforts differ from 2021 going into 2022? And so I'll open that up. We could start with James, if you'd like, and then go to Amy if you have any thoughts, and we'll move around in that way. So James.
Great. Well, thank you, Gary. Happy New Year to everybody. Welcome and good to see you all. Yeah, I think Kara kind of outlined it quite a bit in the presentation. I think one of the things that's really quite different with the ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act funds, as opposed to CARES, is we have a much longer timeline. And I think that allows us the opportunity in the space to be much more intentional about how we actually do our work. So one of the things that Kara sort of talked about a little bit was we're beginning a process of outreach to a lot of community partners and economic development organizations, especially on the economic and workforce recovery side, to basically test some ideas of how we could best use these funds to support, say, small businesses or workforce recovery, those types of things, and really getting their input from their work on the ground, sort of on the front lines of how they're supporting small businesses and workers across Snohomish County. So what that outreach does for us really is it allows us to sort of understand kind of the immediate problems on the ground, how those problems can be sort of tackled essentially in sort of a longer term recovery plan that ARPA allows us to do. And then we really formulate good projects to support the community long term. And I'll turn over to Kara and Amy for more.
Thank you, James. Amy, any thoughts on that question?
I'm going to defer to the professionals that have the most information on this portion. I'll chime in when it comes into the small business community a little bit later.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think we really hope that we're moving from response. So one of the challenges that I'm seeing is that we are stuck a bit in the spin cycle of what is response, what is appropriate response, but it's feeling a little less difficult. And I hold my breath a little bit as Omicron does what Omicron does. And so, but I think that we do need to have a little bit of a mindset change just generally of how are our businesses going to be more resilient through these changes. I think Omicron is a good example of there will still be more, and there will be other things that are not pandemic related, but there will be other challenges that we all see in our economy, and really focusing on how can we weather those storms the best. And from the Snohomish County standpoint, how can we help you weather that storm for the long term? So I think that's really the pivot in the way we're thinking. And finally, I do want to say, and really, I cannot underscore what James said enough, getting into communities that are most affected and really understanding how the pandemic has affected those communities.
Thank you very much. Amy, this one might be directly suited for you as a business leader. What types of incentives, benefits are employers offering to be competitive? So any perspective there?
Yeah, so what we're seeing is a lot of businesses are trying to be as flexible and fluid as they can right now in the ongoing wave of this pandemic. I know that we see a lot of businesses that are going to hybrid models, so either full-time work out of the office, some are full-time in the office, but most of them are a hybrid when they can and allow their teams to be able to work remotely. Flexible hours, there are students who are at home trying to get their education, and parents, that kids come first. So businesses are doing some flexible hours as far as working hours when they can. There are a couple of businesses that I personally talked to that have in-office childcare, especially in areas where internet isn't the easiest to obtain, high bandwidth, or even it could be a monetary issue. So they are allowing their staff to bring in their children to the workforce, and they're put into a different office towards the back area, and their kids do school there on premises. And I think a lot of businesses are looking at the benefits that they can try to offer their team members as far as retirement goes, making sure the health benefits for those small businesses are there, something that's attractive to keep employees and to entice employees to come to their business.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to move along so that we can get to most of these questions we have, and then to the chats. Another question I have for you all, and I'll let you all chime in as you wish on this one, is more specific to what types of businesses are struggling the most and why? Anyone want to tackle that first?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that, Gary. One of the things we saw during the pandemic is if you look at the main industries in Snohomish County, the ones that really hit the hardest, and when we say hit the hardest, really saw lots of people separating from those employers, so getting on unemployment benefits, et cetera. So the ones that were hardest hit were government, healthcare and education, leisure and hospitality, really no surprise there. And then just in general, a lot of small businesses. We saw really significant impacts to small businesses across Snohomish County. We actually hired a consulting firm that completed an analysis in the spring of 2021 to basically get an assessment of what the impacts were. And what we basically found out was that in the height of the pandemic, between basically February to the end of 2020, the county lost about 37,000 jobs across the board. Now, many of those jobs have come back as the waves of the pandemic have kind of eased a little bit, but we continue to see pretty high rates of unemployment across a lot of industries, especially in leisure and hospitality. And not surprising, those are also the industries that are having the hardest time hiring people. So as we go to our favorite restaurant, a lot of times we find out that it's closed on Tuesday. The biggest reason it's closed on Tuesday is they can't get the staff. And even at some of the ski resorts, Stevens Pass, Snoqualmie, et cetera, they're actually having to cut services because of staffing needs. So I think this will be a perennial problem as we try and recover from the pandemic, and definitely something that will need to be addressed.
Any other thoughts on that? Thank you, James. You kind of dug deep.
I'll kind of piggyback on that. The Future Workforce Alliance has produced a strategic plan going forward that we're trying to help these industries that James just mentioned get back on track, retrain some workforce. And our plan, I believe, will be available here shortly, James.
Yeah, it's on our website. I'll see if I can get that in the chat. Hold on.
That'd be wonderful. But we identify numerous goals in the plan to invest and expand in job candidates in the county that, as James was talking about, businesses who are having a hard time retaining talent.
Excellent. And Kara, maybe you can opine a little bit here based on your presentation and what James and Amy have mentioned about the businesses that are hardest hit. Does that have any inkling of the tie into how that funding is being manifested? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, while $160 million does sound like a lot of money, we can make it go quick in Snohomish County, right? And so one of our actually Treasury specifically has said that leisure and hospitality is the bar by which we compare all other businesses. So leisure and hospitality is a clear priority. And add to that areas of geographic areas that have needed previous investment. Treasury just came out with an update. And so, but in Snohomish County, we do have the situation where some business segments have been affected more than leisure and hospitality. And so those are others that we'll be focusing on. And so do know that anything that we will be putting out with ARPA funds will be specifically targeted for those industries most affected, and will not be necessarily a general program. So keep that in mind. And I think one of the things that we're committed to is that if there are businesses, segments, frankly, we've talked with several people on this call already, and we've asked things like, who is most affected? Who are you hearing from? So don't hesitate to send us an email, give us a call, and let us know if you believe that you fall in that category and may not have been caught by the kind of writ large statistics.
Right. Well, thank you very much. I was hopeful that you would give us a little more detail on that, and you totally did. What I'm hoping for is that we get an answer to this question, which is tied to Snohomish County being resilient and attractive to new businesses. Can you tell us about a few new innovative businesses in our region and how they are attracting the talent they need for now and tomorrow? So we'll push it to James to dive in on this one.
Well, I think the biggest news is the one, actually, Gary, you just announced at the beginning with Zero Avia. I think that's a fantastic win for Snohomish County. And it really gets at one of the other factors that Snohomish County had to really deal with when the pandemic began to unfold in 2020, which was when Boeing announced they were moving the 787 line to South Carolina. And I think what Zero Avia really kind of demonstrates is that because Snohomish County has this great talent in aerospace manufacturing and assembly, that we can continue to attract aerospace companies here to the county to really take advantage of that workforce. So I think, again, as we look kind of forward to recovery, I think, maintaining our prominence in aerospace, making sure we have really great pipelines of talent that can work in the aerospace industry, as well as advanced manufacturing, because, a lot of the suppliers, are suppliers to Boeing, but they also supply to other companies around the globe. I think if we can kind of keep our focus on that and really support that, I think we can really support recovery long term. But aside from the announcement, Cross Line Timber Company is going out in Darrington, so that's a big deal. And we also have another organization that's going to Marysville that's working on new sort of indoor agricultural techniques. So I think that's, again, another really sort of optimistic look into the future of what Snohomish County is kind of moving toward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I guess this is a piggyback question. And folks, I will promise to get to the chat after this question. But I would love to hear an answer or some thoughts on what job classifications are highest in demand currently in Snohomish County, and what can the county do to make sure that we produce more job candidates for those needs. So we'll just do kind of an open conversation on this if you'd like. And go ahead, Kara.
I'm going to push it to James for job classifications, and then I can speak to, what we're doing, because let's be honest, economic development director, he's the expert.
James, you're being shy. I know you have this answer.
I feel like a lot of pressure here. I guess in terms of job classifications, I mean, we're seeing things, I think, across the board, and I'm not going to get into a lot of specifics and details here, but I think, again, focusing on those industries, so the entry-level jobs that can be in leisure and hospitality to the more advanced ones in advanced manufacturing and professional services, et cetera. You see those across the board. I think what kind of affords us, if you're a business, is that, and I'm going to kind of steal this from Carrie yesterday, but we talk a lot about the Great Resignation, and a lot of people leaving jobs, taking advantage of career opportunities to train for new skills and that type of thing. But I think instead of looking at it as a great resignation, it's really a great opportunity, right, for businesses. And what we've seen in a lot of the literature and a lot of the research is that employees are really looking for the ability to continue to develop their skills. So once they have a job, are there opportunities for them to gain new skills, to continue to advance either sort of up the ladder in their company, or just get into new types of areas within their company, or just take advantage of other opportunities. So I think if we kind of have that mindset of how we can continue to train the workforce, sort of realizing that, as we go through our careers, we're we never stop learning. We continue to learn. And if we can just sort of institute that into, businesses, employers about this is a great way to both retain the workforce, but also attract new workers to your company, I think we'll be in really great shape.
Awesome. Awesome. Amy, any thoughts on that or?
No, I echo what James is saying. I think we've seen a lot of businesses try to also be very fluid in expanding what they offer as a business. And I think it's the retraining of their team members that is also taking time and focus as well. And I know that the county, and I know that Kara will speak about this, about what we're doing to help retrain team members, or even get them to different industries as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're focused on in our office, and obviously in partnership with James in economic development, is, well, and variety of departments, is who are the individuals that have fallen out of the workforce that actually could rejoin the workforce, and particularly be someone who moves up through the organization. And so we have a reality in Snohomish County where we have a huge Department of Human Services who works with a variety of individuals who have had all sorts of things that have happened in their life that have on some level either fallen out of the workforce or are underemployed. And we have really dug deep in Snohomish County and thought, do we have a role in being the ones that kind of test that concept? And our answer is yes. And so we are actually asking our own county departments to help us support some programs to help determine how can we take individuals who may have been previously incarcerated, or maybe in some of our homelessness shelters, or have received some of those rapid rehousing dollars. How can we help those individuals move themselves into a stable career path that ensures that they aren't in those spaces anymore? And so, and how can we do that as the county? Instead of asking all of you to go out on a limb, how can we make sure that we go out on that limb with you? So something that we're actively working on, in addition to kind of looking at those gaps and changes, and how can we develop individuals? How can we help people move up? And how can we, one of the things that we've heard from some of our small business outreach is we are seeing many individuals get stuck in entry-level positions. So we haven't quite wrapped our head around how we can help with that. But it does seem like there is something there. And so, my only commitment there is the team's going to think about that more and probably come back with, hey, what do you think?
Okay. Well, let's merge two questions here, because I like to make it fun. All right, so we have our amazing Mayor Tolbert, who is from the city of Arlington, with a question in the chat. Can you address new businesses and how you'll be supporting them? Obviously, they have had an amazing time with new business enterprises in Arlington. And then let's couple that with a question that we have as well, which is what services does the county have to offer to small businesses now, and what is the state and county offering? So if we can merge those together, you all can dive in. I won't put you on the spot. Jump in as you wish.
So in supporting new services or new businesses, one of the things that we recognize is that during this reshuffling, let's not call it the Great Resignation, because I truly think we've got a reshuffling going on. We are seeing more entrepreneurs, more small businesses, more niche businesses. Individuals have seen that, working as a bartender classically may not be perfect, but working private event cocktails is where they want to go, or online events or things like that. We're seeing lots of examples of this. And so Snohomish County is currently working on a small business innovation program that, and trying to figure out exactly what the niche is that needs to be filled. There is a lot of support for new businesses, but really figuring out where can we ensure that they long-term are successful. And so that's something that we are absolutely focused on. We've done 10 to 15, we have 10 to 15 meetings scheduled with stakeholders to ensure that we get this right. And James can commit to some of the responses we've gotten have been a little bit like, ooh, we may have to turn this bus on a left-hand turn. That's fine. That's why we're here. James, Amy?
Yeah, like Amy, like Carrie said, we're sort of testing this small business program out, and I think we received quite a bit of great support and feedback on it. So I think we'll be crafting that together fairly soon. I just wanted to kind of give a shout out to Diane from Northwest Innovation Research Center. She's got some great programs to help entrepreneurs, especially on the tech side of things. And then she's also, I think, one more innovative programs is she's developed a data analytics program to help train people in data analytics to support small businesses, which I think is great because I think small businesses, as she has talked to me a number of times, can really benefit from those types of services that data analysts can provide to help them look at ways to grow their business in a way that perhaps they didn't think of before, but also sort of understand how their businesses work and kind of fits within the general small business system as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And welcome, Diane. I see you up in my screen there. Northwest is amazing. And as you can see down here, we've got some comments coming in with support. So Amy, do you want to tap into that as well, that conversation?
Yeah, I would say it just coming from a small business owner. I don't work at the county, so I don't have all the ins and the outs and all the programs. So I defer to both Kara and James on that. But for a small business owner, it's important for us to be able to give out to the community these slides that Kara had in her presentation about the resources for small businesses. Those need to be readily available so that when these funds do become available, I know we're kind of in a weird time right now between two different funding time periods, but just having those resources, be able to push those out to small business owners so they can start doing some research of what the county has to offer, and the state and federal is, I think, really key to the small business thriving in our community.
Awesome, awesome. So we're gonna follow along these lines here. I want to ask one additional question, which is, and you've kind of hinted at it a little bit, James, as well. What's causing the job shuffle? And Amy, you kind of hit on a little bit of this tied to the concerns and issues. And why are so many people not returning to work? And what are the barriers? And Kara, you've kind of hit on this with your thoughts as well. But if there are any additional thoughts you'd like to share on that avenue. Oh, go ahead, James.
Yeah, I think there's no one issue. We talked about the Great Resignation. I saw in the chat someone said it's the Great Retirement too. It's totally the Great Retirement. I think I went through this process too. I think going through a pandemic gives you some opportunity to reflect. As you're kind of sitting at your computer or staring out the window, working hybrid or whatever have you. It's a different time of your life that I don't think any of us have been through. So we kind of reflect on what we're doing. So I think for a lot of folks, they kind of went through that same process, especially those who, kind of work in retail jobs, some of the more impacted, industries like travel, leisure, et cetera. And the pandemic gave them opportunity to reflect. Now I've got to say I've been laid off or furloughed. Well, there's lots of great programs out there. Workforce Solutions has great programs to help people, get training into high demand occupations. So I think a lot of people really took that opportunity to say, hey, this is an opportunity for me to take a change in my life. I'm going to get some technical training or other training through local colleges or other providers and get into something different, something I've always wanted to do or at least interested in doing. So I think Kara rightly said, it is a great reshuffle. It's not necessarily people are leaving the workforce, although we are seeing that through retirements. And I think one of the more troubling statistics is a lot of women are leaving the workforce because of childcare issues and trying to help support their kids in education as schools open, close, et cetera. But I think what this really does is allow people that sort of freedom and that opportunity to get into new careers. And I think we're seeing quite a bit of that happening.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. It looks like there's not one way to address these needs and concerns. There's multiple partners, sources, and opportunities to engage. I want to get to some of these additional questions we have in the chat. We have one that asks about these funds and can any of these funds be used for education at the community college level?
So with regards to education, so education is definitely an allowable use. So I'll just, let's get that out of the way. And so, but as I said, specific communities, specific populations, specific programs. And so I think I think we can all agree that education, especially at our community college powerhouses that work specifically in the space for retraining, for workforce development, is is a great idea, and we would love to learn more about not only the need, but the opportunities. And so you all have our contact information, and
Mm.
we really appreciate that reach out, because we are always looking for the next great idea that is not that short term, but that long term program that really can be supported in Snohomish County.
Okay, and Amy and James have Wes Allen from Snow Tech, who also added to that question and basically said, could this also be used at the K-12 level for training the future workforce, since this is a long-term plan? So each of you can dive in on that if you'd like, but any thoughts on that from the group?
Well, I think, I mean, I'll follow Kara's lead here. I mean, education is definitely a purpose. We actually received from Treasury the brief 400-page final guidelines for how we can use all these funds. So it's a scintillating read. So we'll wade through that to make sure we're doing everything, by the book. But I think, I think one of the things you kind of hear a lot about in the news is that this is an opportunity for catalytic change. I mean, these ARPA funds are once in a lifetime. I doubt we'll ever see this again. And as Gary knows, as an economic developer, we're always optimistic, and it's like, let's do something big with this stuff. And I think that's one of the things we really want to do is not just necessarily address the immediate problem of recovery, which we do need to do and is very important, but how can we also use these funds to really put in place great programs that promotes real system change? So I saw some things in the chat about, are there ways we can support small businesses, on the permitting side, sort of the operational parts of getting small businesses, stood up. Yeah, I think we should. I think we should address the whole ecosystem of a small business, how you create it, how you support it, and how they grow. That's what these funds are really, I think, meant to do, is not go back to how things were, but to go to something different and new. I think that's one of the ways we're being super intentional as we develop these programs, so we can really put in place a new system that does things better than we did in the past.
Thank you. Amy, I was wondering, based on your expertise in your field, there was a question from Karen Thompson about what do you most hope to see change from business as usual post-pandemic? In your industry, are there things that you've seen through the pandemic that you feel like, we don't really need that to carry on into the future, or we hope that this changes things? Any thoughts on that?
I think the one thing I talk to our clients about is understanding how to run and manage a small business. And I think that what the pandemic has done has forced people to look at their business plans, look at their future. I think small businesses tend to operate on a month-to-month or year-to-year basis. And I think unless you can look far out into the future, like a 5-year goal, that could all come to a stop, like we've seen for some business owners in the past 2 years. And I think, what James has been talking about our plan and from the Future Workforce Alliance, it is trying to get small business owners to understand that looking into the future is the best thing they can do for their business. So I think that's one major change that I think has come out of this. And I think just being more fluid. I think that there was a huge hesitation to have team members and staff work from home. And I think that you have companies now that are investing in infrastructure, technology, and things they had not done in the past, and finding out it's actually cheaper to run their business that way than it is to have some large storefront spaces, and to be able to have and attract talent. Other ways to attract talent is to offer hybrid type situations. So I think small businesses will go that way in the future. Doesn't help the medical or tourism, leisure departments, but definitely the small business owner department.
All right, and I think there was a question, Kara, about childcare and that workforce. Any thoughts on that?
I have many thoughts on childcare. Childcare is actually one of our. It is something that our office has not only recognize, but recognize that this is an expanding need of consistent available childcare. And some of our early funding has gone towards childcare. Some of the CARES funding had gone towards childcare, and our future funding will go towards childcare. And we have been, originally we were focused on more of those, future looking goals. So some of the requirements for childcare teachers and employees have changed, and supporting individuals through that to bolster the workforce. So we were going to focus on that, focus on increasing slots. But I will tell you, the childcare system is fragile and has been fragile, was fragile before the pandemic. And unfortunately, what the pandemic did was increase costs combined with additional regulations, which are good regulations to ensure licensure and things like that, but increase costs, more licensure, and then add to that inflation and increasing rental costs. And we were in the situation where we were seeing, and I think maybe some of you saw it, childcare facilities that were going to close. And so one of our first focus is to ensure that we don't have childcare facilities that are going to close. But our second focus is really strengthening that workforce, solidifying the basics, the location, the teacher availability, some of these items, and then really ensuring that we have childcare for essential workers. And essential workers is that broad category of pretty much individuals who have to go physically to work and don't have a choice. And so we're working on all of those mechanisms. But I will tell you that childcare, it was fragile before, and it's even more fragile now. And so know that we are very focused in this space. It is part of the recovery. It is a huge prong in our workforce recovery to get people to return to the workforce. So we are committed, but I will say that it is a very difficult, system without a significant amount of new permanent investment from probably the federal government.
Thank you so much. I really feel as though what you've highlighted is that this focus is going to be holistic in essence, that it's about not only just the basics of business, but quality of life for our residents through that focus, realizing that these things aren't mutually exclusive, which I love the fact that you're talking about it in that space. There was an additional question tied to back to education, whether or not funds may be available for career change or degree completion education at the bachelor levels. Any thoughts on that? And then I wanted to piggyback that again, Amy, to ask as far as workforce needs in your industry and beyond. Are there other pain points that you feel need to be addressed as we move forward? So, and Amy, you don't have to answer that question first. We can go to James for the and unless Kara, are you going to answer that? Okay.
Well, so let me I'll talk about the funding side, but then I'm going to kick it to James. So on the degree completion, pivoting positions, things like that, like these are all opportunities. And what I want to say, and this is where I'm going to pivot to James very quickly, is to say, we want this to be part of our overall workforce strategy. None of this should live in isolation, because if it does, it won't make it past this funding being alive. And we don't want to be in that situation. We want good programs to be able to grow and for us to be able to depend on them. There's nothing worse than us depending on a program that doesn't continue on. And so I will pivot to James. So James, who is our workforce expert, can talk about workforce.
Appreciate that, Kara. Yeah, I think going back to sort of some of the comments that I made already. I mean, again, it's looking at system change. It's really putting in place really great programs to support the county's recovery and then long-term resiliency building. So, depending on what the needs of businesses are, what industry and the industries that are most affected, if we need some workforce training programs. I think we'll definitely give that a serious look. And I do know, as Amy talked about with this Future Workforce Alliance strategic plan, that there's a lot of great strategies that are in that. We're going to start implementing that strategic plan this year. So we'll probably have more information to share with you, Gary, and everyone else in Snohomish County, hopefully by Q2 of this year as well.
Thank you. Amy, I know I asked you a specific question there, and I wanted to piggyback on that because there was another question tied to it, tied to customers being willing to pay more to honor employee value and services and processes. So we'll package that together.
Great. So I think that's kind of a loaded question. I think it depends upon the services. I think you're seeing the restaurant industry being very supported by the community, which is great. I think people are paying more, tipping more. Our clients are saying that. We have restaurant owners that are thriving right now because it is a different environment. It is cheaper for them to be able to do takeout than it is to have in-restaurant dining. I will say that on the ground, what I hear from small businesses, and for those that you don't know me, I do work with a lot of small businesses, like 50 and under employees. The main things I'm hearing are childcare issues, retraining their teams and staff in certain ways, supply chain issues. So while we all say construction is booming, there's a huge supply chain issue in terms of just general construction, artists and contractors, even down to issues with having PPE and testing, right? So we have going on right now, I have talked to 2 businesses yesterday where they can't get their hands, or their employees can't, on testing kits and the appropriate PPE. So there's a lot of things that small businesses are, I unfortunately think, are going to experience the next 6 to 9 months. And those are probably the four biggest things.
Thank you so much for tackling that. I threw you a big question there, but I would like to ask another question that I see in the chat, and James and Cara, if you're willing to engage on this one, it's about the roadblocks that people see for opening and operating small business. Is there an opportunity that the county is looking at to streamline any redundant or sluggish permitting and funding timelines? So that may be tied to how these funds roll out or other avenues, but just a general question there.
So
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry.
go ahead, James.
Yeah,
James,
I mean,
it's been longer.
Yeah, right. I mean, starting up a small business is hard, and especially going through the permitting process, understanding what needs to be done. So I think this is something that we could, definitely give a look at, and potentially Gary, being your role with the ASC, I think as sort of that main convener of all the local governments in Snohomish County, especially those that have the authority to establish and give permits and licensing to small businesses. This would be something I think would be great to, we could work on together to really sort of understand if there's ways to streamline and make it simpler.
Excellent, excellent. Cara, were you going to jump in on anything, or?
Well, I will just say one of the opportunities of a short-term office with, some opportunity is this is, yes, there are these funding, there are these programs, but there are other items that we are looking at and saying, hey, this will make a more resilient Snohomish County. And so this is a great example of, sure, it may be peripherally attached, but it recovers Snohomish County faster and creates a more resilient Snohomish County. So this could definitely be a focus of work. And but this type of work, particularly working and permitting, at least in my previous role, it is something that requires a convener that's able to channel that voice of small businesses, because it's really hard on the inside of government to understand the impacts of that one more form, that one more name in 10 more places. So just recognize that the convener, it tends to be the key here.
Thank you very much. So we're down to the wire here. I'm going to ask one final question, and then each of you have a chance to just kind of give a closing remark if you'd like. But I do want to highlight that we also have our Snohomish STEM director here, Angie Sievers, is with us. And so I'd love your thoughts on merging the future Workforce Alliance with those efforts that STEM has, and thinking about how we evaluate higher education as well as internships and apprenticeships. So just a generalist comment to see if I can pull any thoughts from James or Amy on that front. So.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things we've talked about, themes we've talked about during this conversation is change and really reshuffling and going from something different to something new. And having worked with Angie for the past couple of years, she does great work with Snohomish STEM and has great connections and great ideas. And I think as we kind of move forward to this new economy and a new workforce that's needed to really support it, I think STEM, especially in the K through 12, is going to be critically important. So I think working with her and in conjunction with the Future Workforce Alliance and blending that work into our strategic plan will be a great thing to do. So we plan on doing it. So thank you.
All right. Amy, it looks like you're comfortable with James's thoughts there. So what we will do now, folks, is we're going to transition. We're going to start with Kara, if you are willing to give your closing thoughts to the group, and then we'll go to Amy and then James. I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, first I want to say thank you all for being here and the excellent questions. One of the things that I hope that we really are able in our office to transition to is really doing more, really hearing more from you all and communities and businesses that have been affected by this pandemic, so that we are making the right decisions with, frankly, your tax dollars. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much, and thank you for helping us envision and dream about what a better recovery looks like and how this new normal will be for Snohomish County. So again, thank you so much. Our door is wide open, and thanks.
Thank you, Kara. I'll piggyback on top of that. I feel very blessed to be in this county, a resident and a business owner. I think that this county, all of our local municipalities work really well together to support not only just community and the residents here, but the businesses that are here. I think that the business owners are largely supported, going back to will people pay more? I think business owners here are largely supported by the community. I think that the community understands the need for small businesses and would put their money there as opposed to, say, some larger online retailers. I think Snohomish County has so much potential. I know that working with the Future Workforce Alliance, just reaching out to the community members of small business and owners, they're not in despair. I think a lot of people are looking forward to this future and how we can pivot and move forward. And I feel very blessed to be part of that process. And again, very blessed to be in this county. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you all very much. It's great to see you all. Gary, thank you for this great opportunity. I just echo everything Kara and Amy already said, and maybe just to add that, this is a team effort. It's a team effort with Kara and myself and sort of the broader Snohomish County team. It's a team effort with the Future Workforce Alliance to really bring these ideas forward for a great workforce. And then it's a broader team effort across really the whole county, working with Gary, Angie, and Diane and others to really kind of really make this work well as Joy at Workforce Snohomish. So yeah, it's a team effort, and we look forward to engaging you and really doing great work ahead in partnering with you. So thank you.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. An amazing update from our panelists here. We want to thank Kara for being here. As you are new, but you have hit the ground running and have given us a wealth of knowledge today and information. So we appreciate the work that you are doing. Amy, as always, as one of our leaders and also the Future Alliance as well for Workforce, I think that you have just put your hands on as much as you can to make sure that you're imparting efforts, and we really appreciate your leadership there. And James, it's just been a pleasure to get to know you and see that you really live, eat, sleep, and breathe this economic development work and trying to make Snohomish County better. And I think your touch is really going to be helpful as we try to move forward. So I appreciate you all joining us today. And before I tear up with all of those appreciations, I would like to make sure that everyone on the Zoom realizes that, guess what? January 20th And the 21st, we have Economic Alliance Advocacy Days. So please, please remember that we would love to have you a part of this effort and to join us for that. And then last but not least, we have our upcoming coffee chats. January 25th at 8:30 a.m. We have the current port of Everett supply chain impacts. And this is going to be really important, navigating supply chain, as Amy mentioned. This is going to be something that you're not going to want to miss. Dig deep into this information to make sure that you join us. So, folks, if you have your coffee cups, please raise them up in solidarity. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, I see you all. Have an amazing day, and keep that little ray of sunshine inside, as it may be gloomy outside, but it can always be sunny inside. All right. Have a great day, folks.